Okay. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's get started. And I'll start off with a call to order. Battle. Here. Di. She said she was coming, so I bet she'll come. Eater. Here. DeBenedetto.
Here.
Mastel. Here. Okay. So we still have a quorum, because we have 5 members, and if one's gone, then we still have a quorum. So we're good to go.
We're good.
Yep, okay, good deal. Okay, so item number 3, agendas are right here. Anybody needs one?
Oh, there are?
Yes, yeah. Can we grab one? Still in? So the item number 3 is approval of the minutes, and we had in a very, less than 5-minute meeting on July 15th, and we're going to just move the approval of the minutes for that meeting to our October meeting.
Oh, okay.
If that's okay.
Your meeting, don't give me.
There's probably some parliamentary procedure that we're not doing exactly right, but.
Just move the table that to the next meeting?
Yeah, we're going to table that.
October 15th?
Okay, I move that we table approval of the minutes to our October meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and any discussion?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we'll have that on the October. And Marcy just texted me, said she's on her way.
Good.
Great.
Perfect. Okay, so we have 3 items under new business, and we are going to start with the first one, which is funding support for feasibility study for Brewery Hill Pathway. Nick Gaddy is here. Okay, so you are a board member. You have an application in front of you. We do not have copies for you all, but since we haven't seen it, I just kind of asked Nick if he would just kind of walk us through it. And I know that Nick has talked to the mayor, so there's a lot that has already been talked about that I don't know about either, so.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I also realized it wasn't until this afternoon I realized that my project description did not make it into the application, so I have a copy for everyone there
so.
that's kind of
Okay.
more.
The one I'm looking at is completely blank. I don't see any fields in it.
The one I sent in should have.
That's the one, yeah, we get from email, and it looks like it's blank. Are those 3 blank too, or just those? Jeff, did you have?
There are some parts that are filled out online, but anyway, we'll
Yeah.
have you.
And I don't have an Adobe Acrobat or an Adobe account, so I can't actually edit the application, so maybe that's something to think about in the future.
Oh,
is
yeah,
making
okay.
The application
All right.
easier to fill out,
Oh.
online, so I had to print it and then scan it back to the computer, so.
Oh.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just kind of start at the beginning. Dave and I have been working on this since February. Where basically it was kind of like one of those things where when the state of Montana did their project on Brewery Hill, 10 years ago.
Transportation you're talking about.
Yep.
Yep.
MBT, yep. So, they at the time said that the hill was too steep to put a pathway on, that it's the grade is steeper than the 5% ADA compliance. And so there was a no answer, they didn't do it. Obviously, people are still walking up and down that, on the side of the street there. So Dave and I and a few members from our board had a discussion with Montana Department of Transportation folks about, what we needed to do in order to get a pathway in. I think we were all pretty surprised that instead of facing any no's, they were all kind of well, yeah, there should be a pathway there. This is crazy that there isn't one. And so they were really helpful in getting the ball rolling. And they said, one of the gentlemen on the call, his name is David Holeen, and he is the program manager for Transportation Alternatives Program, which is an MDT program that funds these kind of alternative, or sustainable infrastructure projects for the state of Montana. And he said that we'd be a great applicant for this project. And basically it's a competitive application. So municipalities throughout the state of Montana will apply. Some will be granted funding, some will not. But if your application is accepted, it will essentially pay for the entire project. So, the city would bid out a construction company, the construction company come in, complete the project. But So yeah, it's kind of a, it's a great opportunity for, a pathway to be built there. The other thing that they recommended though is because this application is competitive, they said that the more information, the more detail you have in your application, the better. And they recommended this like feasibility study. I think that's kind of what we're calling it. You could also think of it as like a preliminary engineering study. And essentially what it does is, it's going to give us the exact details of our project. So that way we have a good cost estimate to give to the state of Montana for our funding. We're accurate in that, but also like the details of the pathway itself, design, stuff like that. And Great West, they recommended that Great West conduct it. Great West has applied on behalf of municipalities in Montana already. They're pretty familiar with the Transportation Alternatives Program and its applications. So yeah, Dave and I then have been moving forward with that. So kind of where we're at right now is Great West is going to be conducting their feasibility study probably this month in order to like have it all, completed so that we can apply for the January application. And we've been basically just trying to fund this feasibility study. Again, ideally this would be the only expense to our community, and if it gets accepted, the rest of the program is funded through the state of Montana. So we'd come up with a, kind of a way that Bear Tooth Trails and the city could budget for it, and we've gotten other HOAs involved, but, we didn't think of the Urban Renewal Agency as like one of the sources we could secure funding from. So yeah, basically here to kind of see if that was something that you guys are interested in, if it's a project you're interested in. I mean, I know James Canigula was actually the one who originally brought it to our attention, was like, well, why didn't you guys ask? Dave and I kind of were like, yeah, why didn't we? But I had some supporting documents in here. One of them is, actually out of the Urban Renewal Agency's like ordinance, or like, that it has a picture of the lack of there's a picture of the Brewery Hill, footpath there. It's highlighted as like a safe connections issue. It's in that kind of north entrance district, so really I feel like it checks pretty much all the boxes that I can see. Filling out the application's a little tough because it's, again, we're not building anything, we're not developing anything. It's just, kind of instead of feasibility thing. So I did my best to fill it out as much as I thought was accurate. But I feel like, it's like a little bit different than I feel like the application might be structured for. So yeah, I don't know, I guess.
And so it looks like here that you have, like on the cost worksheet, which is kind of an important part, it looks like there's really you have 19,000 for architectural design and supervision, and then, then application refunded if project accepted at 5,000, so the total cost is 24,000?
Yep.
Okay.
So the feasibility study, and that's like a cost maximum estimate. I mean,
okay.
I think it's pretty rare that people come under cost, so we're using that as like our reference point, but it is certainly possible that the feasibility study only costs $14,000, for example. And then, the $5,000 application is then, if it's accepted, so if they accept the application, then the city would be refunded, or whoever pays that would be refunded that application fee as well. So that's the hope.
Is it you're hiring Great West to do it, or is it, and then, so
they've been hired. I mean, it's happening.
It's happening.
Well, as of tomorrow night, hopefully, so we haven't pulled the thread on it without council approval.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. And then, is it, if that's the total cost, or is it like that you're applying for a planning grant from the state?
No,
You probably said that, but I was.
No, so there's this like feasibility study is just to make sure their application has the best chance of success. So, if you come in and say, hey, we would like to, put a 1,500-foot pathway down the side of the road, but we don't know how wide it's going to be, or if we're going to need new drainage, or, so they want like a very tight application.
Okay.
So this is more to like be like, yes, this is how many feet, how wide, this is what we're going to have to make changes to, how much this is going to cost.
Okay. So
and I've walked it with like one of the engineers from Great West already.
Okay.
We have a plan, but they're like kind of coming up with the design as a part of that like feasibility study.
Okay, awesome.
Well, sounds like something that would be useful even if you didn't get the TAP funding, like.
Yeah, exactly
So-
right, yeah. And I think that's like, the hope is that we get, our applications accepted and that we just go down that road, because it seems like the best, for funding wise, it's definitely the easiest, but, we have to consider that, not all applications get accepted, so, but yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree that it's pretty, the community has identified it as a need, whether it's in the, the 2016 Active Transportation Plan, the charter for this, group. I mean, it's kind of everywhere out there, and so it seems like kind of a good time to just act. I mean, we have a good pathway forward for it, but, making this first step is pretty important.
Anybody else have any questions?
Well, I'm confused now about the process. So you said you're going to take it to the city council?
So, so the project,
Yeah,
I assume what you're talking about is a trail down Brewery Hill.
right,
Step one in the project is to have a feasibility study.
right,
So Great West has presented us with a task order. We've talked to them about scope. We've created all the scope,
right.
but we have not said go yet. Because, so that question is, we're gonna go to city council tomorrow, and it's actually on as just it's not even a resolution, it's just approved to go sign the task order. So that doesn't even really take into account, because one of the things is, it's $25,000. Now, we've got, as Nick mentioned, some donors who've indicated that they're gonna help.
Mhm.
So that puts the city on the hook for some value up to $25,000, or $25,000, $24,000.
Sorry.
The second part of that, Joanne,
Yeah,
is the Urban Renewal District, which, again, as Nick identified, this is like literally one of the things they talked about when we were doing the Urban Renewal
Right.
District
Yeah.
planning. But then there's also the part, there's been a discussion in this group, wait, do we want to spend any money, do we not want to
Right.
spend any money? So, and at the time was, what if the perfect project falls in our lap, do we spend some money on?
mhm,
From a budget standpoint, this is not something that was built into our big budget, let's go spend some money for
Right.
this. And so it's certainly easier if we can say that urban renewal stuff, which is set aside for this, is stuff that we can use. But then you guys would make a recommendation, yes, we recommend doing some urban renewal dollars for this purpose, and then council would ultimately approve that as a resolution as well.
right. So my question mark is, we don't know how much we're being asked for.
Yes,
Yes, yeah.
it's a maximum of 24,000 less whatever else other people donate.
That's right. So that's not a specific
No.
amount. And so,
Then
that's
say
my
up to 24,000.
concern, I guess.
Yeah, I
No-
mean,
no more.
ideally, like, I mean, in my perfect world, the Urban Renewal District, agency would fund it, and then, HOAs don't have to, Beartooth Trails does not have to,
No.
the city does not have to,
But it would be nice to be buy-in, because we've talked about this before, that we don't want to be the sole funder. We want to participate with
Okay, yeah.
other collaborators. And so I guess those are my
And so you
questions.
could say, we're gonna put in 10 or 15, and then you
That's
come
right.
up with the other donors.
That's what
Yeah.
I was thinking. Or we could offer to match or something like that. We would ask for a match.
Okay.
I mean,
But we don't know at this
but
point.
we don't know
Yeah.
at this point, so it's kind of premature. This is just running it up the flagpole and seeing.
When you,
Except if the city says go, that's why I'm.
Yeah, I think we have to, it sounds like we have to be decisive, and we have to pick an amount that we feel comfortable paying. And then if it's not the full amount, then between the donors and the city, they might make up the difference potentially.
yeah, so I think, going back to Joanne's idea, I think if you guys do half, we can get the other half donated from HOAs and parks. And I think to a certain extent, some of those have said, it'll hurt, but if we have to, we'll step in to help make sure. So I think this is just the city also showing buy-in via the urban renewal.
Mhm.
I think it's a much stronger project with more buy-in from,
That's
especially
true.
from the HOAs that are gonna be using it possibly the most. I mean, it seems like that's one of their selling points when they go to sell property.
Well, and something you can mention in your application is
Yeah.
all of those matching partners. You know, the bigger the coalition, the better that application's gonna look.
Yeah.
Sure.
It also, yeah, that makes it much better for the TAP app,
Right.
right?
Yeah, so I mean, I agree, this is my first time doing this, and so,
Same here.
Not
So
totally
we're,
sure
we're all,
like how
we're all
that-
in the same boat.
you know, like, again, like my lofty goal was like, well, if, you know, the urban renewal district will pay for the whole thing, then great, you know, then our nonprofit doesn't have to shell out $5,000 for this, you know, for this, which would be huge for us, because we can use that money elsewhere. But I also understand that, you know, like, the negotiation,
But you
the
could
working together and.
You could also do a fundraising specifically for this
Oh, yeah.
through Bear Truth Trail.
I mean,
you
we
know,
essentially have been. this year.
so that it's not taking it out of your budget.
Well, yeah, the thing we've been thinking about too is like, this is a new district and there's not a lot of funding in it. We don't even have, does Lonnie know if we have like?
We
funds
actually
in
have the
account
number, and
now?
it turns out the reason that we don't have the number is because it was an error at the county or the state level.
Mhm.
There was some box they didn't check.
Oh,
So we do have that number, and it's 119, 124,
okay, that's
somewhere,
about,
but the answer is, the reason we didn't have it was not that it takes time, it was because it wasn't passing through the system.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So,
We're
yeah,
all
so
learning.
like if all we have is 119 some, you know, as of this year,
Mhm.
we just have to think about that, you know, it's
Mhm.
not a unlimited bucket of money.
Okay.
And in previous conversations, we had talked about, you know, a $300,000 kind of threshold to reach before we even start distributing funds.
Mhm.
So, I mean, in my mind, this sounds like
Sorry.
one of those perfect,
Yeah.
you know, it's in our,
It's
our
literally
renewal
in our-
plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, the
Yeah.
pictures, and I mean, it's kind of like, you know, James, like, it was a huge reason why we
Yeah.
formed the
Yeah.
urban renewal
That's
district in
right.
the first place. You know, and again, I know that it was designed for like big projects, and that this is kind of an alternative to that like big project number, but it also does seem like it's a pretty, you know, slam dunk way of doing it. You know,
Mhm.
then, you know, the funding, the big chunk of the funding for the actual construction is not, you know, we don't have to find that money in our community, so.
Exactly.
So that's another thing that we talked about is leveraging our funds, and so
Mhm.
this would be a good leveraging
For sure.
because it would lead to much greater
Yeah,
participation.
yeah.
Yeah.
Does the criteria for funding include feasibility studies?
I think it does. I think I remember
Legally
it being
speaking, like,
in there.
several of our examples have
Yeah.
done that, so Missoula for sure, and I think Bozeman too.
Well, I know other
So,
communities have,
Yeah,
but
but in terms
does
of our
our
application-
plan itself outline that, or,
Good question. I
That's-
vaguely remember it.
I wanna say
in
we
there
had some like,
somewhere.
yeah, it's been a while since I looked at that, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and that's what
So this
they're
is
saying,
like
yeah, it was
brand new
yeah,
stuff.
new for everybody,
Yeah.
which is
So we're all
nice.
learning and like learning what should go there and
Yeah.
what the process is and.
And there are other, you know, there are other parts of this, you know, that you guys might be interested in, like, there is, it's like a match part of the, you know, like a community match is a part of the transportation alternatives. Like if our program gets accepted, do we have somewhere to match? There's also the discussion of like, how is it maintained? Is it going to be, you know, is the city gonna have to put extra budget in there to make sure that it gets plowed or shoveled, you know? And maybe that's another way that you guys could become involved, you know, on the back end of it or something. So, you know, there's a lot of ways to do it, but, you know, kind of one of those things where it's like, well, money is money is money, as long as we have the funding somewhere, it doesn't, you know, it could be at the front end, the back end. Because, yeah, I mean, right now, like, if we had to, you know, as long as the city council approved the task order tomorrow, I mean, we would essentially have the funding for it, but, you know, it would make it a little easier on each, you know, entity if, you know, that was reduced a bit. I think that'd be helpful.
Yep,
Prepare plans. There's quite a few references.
perfect. I knew there was something in there.
I thought there was.
Somebody asked if we are allowed to do plans, and on page 31 and 32 of the urban renewal plan, it's several references to plans, but that's an acceptable use of funding, so.
Thank you, Chris.
Perfect.
What was the other page?
31 and 32, mostly on 32. Page 32, it talks about to prepare plans for carrying out a program. Okay, well, I haven't heard one single word of disagreement with supporting this. I'm just gonna say for my, I'm the chair, I know I'm not supposed to really say, but I know how hard it is for a nonprofit to raise money, and they work really hard, and they just made a huge step in hiring the first executive director. So I think we should, I'm in favor of supporting it, and this is just commentary, I would like to see more versus less. But I do think that's a huge, if we can have like multiple funding sources for funding this piece, I think that's a very strong, indication of support. But you're gonna have a good case no matter what.
Yeah, definitely.
Can I,
Yes.
I think it would be, mine doesn't include any information either, my copy of that.
No, I realized
So
when I printed it, that it was basically, what I have is a blank,
Right.
so I don't have the complete.
So I think we should maybe, wait until we get a complete,
I don't think we can wait.
we
I
can't
think
wait.
we need to make a
Okay.
decision.
All right,
So
Yeah,
the council has direction tomorrow, yeah.
okay. Okay,
Council can move it forward, also, but our concern is making sure we have an application in time for next year's, we want to be in for next year's funding source.
right.
So you think we don't have to approve this today, but we know that it's not more than 24,000, the total cost for this
Yeah.
piece, this project to prepare for the application.
I think if I present this to council tomorrow and say I would like to sign the task order, and somebody says, how are you gonna pay for it? And I say, Nick has secured funding for half of it from the HOA, and they're willing to kick in from Beartooth Trails, and URD has advised that we could use that for half of the dollars, then I think that's something that council says, yeah, I'm comfortable with that. So particularly if the city money is coming from the URD, as opposed to like, we have to pull it out of something we were gonna do in parks, we have to pull it out of someplace else we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Well, and it can always come back after and
Right.
amend as necessary.
But we need a resolution then, right?
You guys just ultimately, before council approves the URD dollars, it would take a council resolution, and you guys should offer your support before that. What we're doing tomorrow is saying, please start the work.
Right,
And yes, we're telling you we will pay for it. And there's a little bit of a gutsy in there, unless you know, and I feel fairly comfortable with talking to Nick that we have at least half of that met from our commitments. Now, again, that's like answering the phone on telephone night, right? Until the check shows up, there's a question
Yeah.
mark.
I know, like, in our budget this year, like, we have like $5,000 to go to this, and I've talked to like the Spires, to the Red Lodge Country Club Estates, Property Owners Association, and Alpine Basin, and they have all said that they would contribute to the feasibility study, so. Yeah, there's like, kind of right now, it's like, the city, like, where David had originally, it's like, the city was on PRAP, we're on for a quarter, and then the other quarter was like made up of HOAs, so. And I got a letter of support, like, in the works from like from Parks Board, I mean, they've been in on it. So there's, support on a city level there too.
Okay, so. I
So,
think if
so
we-
what you're saying is BT is in for 5,000
Mm-hmm.
and the other HOAs are in for,
Essentially like 5,000 between them, yeah.
So that leaves it at 14,000 or 9,000?
Well,
All of them have echoed basically the same conversation in this room. We're happy to see it happen. We're happy to contribute as little as we can, but we'll do contribute what we need. And that's why I like Joanne's idea of going a 50-50 match or a split or something, because that gives us the leverage to go back to them and say, they'll put in if you will. And then based on their comments, I feel comfortable that they would do that.
Well, does anybody want to make a motion from our board?
well, I will.
Go for it, Joanne.
So I move that we, support this application, with 50% of the cost, if they are matched by other organizations.
I would second that.
We need the same amount, like up to a certain amount, or?
Probably a good idea.
Yeah,
50%, which would be
up to 10,000,
the 12?
12, up to 12,000. That's, yeah. Okay, I amend my resolution with that caveat, up to 12,000.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right?
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, guys, this is major. I'm so excited. I drive with that. I think you should do like, how many people dodge cars every day and
I know.
and all the things? Oh,
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the part that I forgot to submit was like the project story, you know, and it's like, yeah, not only is it unsafe for people to walk up and down that hill, but, you know, I think we, you know, when I was walking with Brandon Duffy from Great West, it's like, oh, you look at the east bench and there's no development going on up there. And you look at the west bench and you look at the traffic going up the hill and it's all happening there. And none of those communities can get into town unless they go all the way down to McGillen Street and walk down the only pathway that connects the growth of the west bench to town, you know. And I think I also talk about the, you know, the past fall, the downtown revitalization plan, you know, and the walkability, and I mean, that is like a huge connectivity issue right there.
My group of lady friends walked it the other day, and what you notice is that if you don't walk in the middle of the road, it's very uneven, and so it's more handicap accessible to all different people if you have a nice, so I think that's another thing we should put in there too.
Yeah.
the gravel and stuff, I heard that.
We
Yeah.
understand that some of the pictures we have
Yeah.
for the story is wheelchairs going up and down the hill, so.
Yeah.
Great, great.
Yeah,
Wow.
we have a picture of
That'd
like
be
some other
great.
wheelchair, like coming down, and, you know, again, like when I was there
Whoopee!
with Brandon walking it, you know, someone was walking down the hill and he's taking photos of it, and was like, yeah, that stuff is exactly what the state of Montana wants to see. There was, you know, like, yeah, they've got it all figured out, so but I mean, it would be a huge victory for the community if we got accepted for this. You know, it's gonna take a little while to like get it all contracted, the timeline's definitely out in the future, but I mean, it would be, you know, someday there would be a pathway there, and I think that would be really huge.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you for bringing it. to
Yeah.
us.
okay, that's
Yep.
our second.
Yay.
Good job, guys.
Well, that one checks all the boxes, so.
Okay. Perfect, okay, thank you.
I gotta say one more thing.
Mhm.
One other thing about this is it affects everybody in
Oh,
town.
yeah.
You know, this is it. This is gonna affect the whole population of town, not just the urban renewal.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times, you know, when I was the general manager of the pizza company, a particular employee who like lives in Mountain View and does not own a vehicle, you know, and he would walk up and down that, I mean, to go get groceries or to walk to work, no matter what time of the year it was. And, you know, when I could, I would give him a ride home after work, but, you know, Damon would walk to work every day from Mountain View down. There's a paved pathway that goes right to the road and then it stops.
Yeah.
It goes nowhere, you know, and
Yeah.
all those people who live up there who don't have access to vehicles walk up and down that hill, and I think that it would, you know, be really beneficial to them or any future, you know, affordable housing up there. It's kind of like you can't, you know, we're assuming affordable housing, you know, do those people have transportation? And if they don't, what good is it to build the housing there if they can't get around?
Yeah.
If they can't get to their place of work, if they can't go shopping,
No, they can't.
you know, get groceries,
No.
it's, you know,
Sustainable place to
pretty,
live.
yeah, so.
So you have your story written already.
Yeah,
Great.
no, I think about Damon all the time, walking up and down that hill. I mean, it's like, you can see that from the satellite imaging, you know, from space, you can see that pathway.
Yeah.
You know, that people walk in the grass, I mean, it's well worn,
Yeah.
you know, which shows how much it gets used, so. And I mean, even folks that, you know, I've spoken with who maybe have a second home at the golf course, it's like, when we come, and some of us wanna go do this, and some of us wanna go shopping, we have to make a choice, because
Yeah.
you can't just walk into
No.
town to go shopping, or, you know, and we take the car to go on a hike, it's like, we have to choose or drop people off, and there's that, you know, you can't walk from town to the rodeo, like, unless you go up McGillen, you know, make this big diversion south, so. it would be helpful.
Is that gonna accommodate bicycles as well, or is it just gonna
So,
be strictly?
I think right now,
pedestrian?
the plan would be to have a 48-inch path, so probably like a little, like, you know, the width of one of these tables, essentially, so it would be, you know, with maybe some bolts, you know, for passages and stuff, so they already, you know, the shoulder's already a little extra wide for bicycles, and that was part of that, like, that project. But, you know, kind of like, you know, I'm a bicyclist, I'm like, you really shouldn't be on the sidewalk because you're not a vehicle, but people do it, and, you know, I think people will do it if it's there. I mean, you know, the book says you're probably not supposed to,
Does
but,
the shoulder give enough space for a bicycle safely without being impacted by vehicles, traffic? I mean, some of these shoulders are so narrow that,
yeah, I think currently it does, but again, like, in like, for example, the summertime, but if you're trying to ride your bike when there might be snow at the edge of the road or something, then maybe not, you know, and, I mean, I rode it a number of times this summer, just, you know, in part just to, like, see what it feels like to be on the roadway, and I don't feel like I'm, like, in traffic at all, but it still would be really, you know, I mean, I think in some situations I could see where you'd want to ride on the sidewalk if it was
Well,
there.
I just hope
Well,
that
it's
you
just
consider
kinda-
a tow rope, because
Yeah.
that's the steep
Yeah.
for.
It is 9%, it is actually.
That's why I don't
so-
ride it, because I need tow rope.
Yeah, it's
but I think something to keep in mind is that with the amount of development going on the
Mhm.
East Bench and the projections for future development, especially at Spires, that traffic on Brewery Hill is just gonna
It's gonna
be
get
much
higher.
greater and much faster, so kind of planning for future growth or incorporating
Yeah.
future growth and future traffic loads into this feasibility study and design, I think is something that would be really important.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
it ties right into safe routes to school,
Yeah,
the whole thing.
So,
One down.
we have had a year and a half with not a whole lot going on, and now we have a whole bunch in one meeting. So this is an excellent conversation, but I am going to, need to, end it so we can move on to
yeah.
some other really great conversations. So, all right with everybody, we'll move on to the next one, potential LIDIC project discussion with Angela Getchell, Workforce Housing Manager of the Red Lodge Area Community Foundation, and developer Tom Fisher. And Tom Fisher is on the Zoom call. He was gonna try to be here tonight, but, was not able to be here, but maybe next month. So Angela, I guess I'll just turn it over to you to kind of orient us and, kick us off.
Okay. So, Tom, can you hear us? Or can
He's mute.
Tom, I'll ask
You're
because I'm a
muted.
little louder. Can you hear us all right?
You are muted, so you can unmute yourself.
And he may have stepped away because we were talking about, although he is
Yeah.
excited about the trail as
he
well.
might be on a phone
Yeah.
call or something?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll just kind of start, but, so we, you know, we're looking at affordable housing, so, and trails will help with that as well. But, we're excited about this, and we've had several conversations and, meetings with different partners, to see really what we could do. So, we too are interested, in the north end of town, also the Brewery Hill. You know, we're actually doing we'll put in for a grant with the city as a recipient, the foundation as a, sub-recipient to do a feasibility, housing feasibility study. So we should know about that probably within the next couple of weeks if we were awarded that or not. So that will be, exciting too. Hopefully we'll get that, and that'll kind of, get us going as well. But, Tom actually worked on the apartments up on the hill 20 years ago. And he just really wants to help our community with affordable housing too. And so he does these LIHTC projects as well. And
LIHTC stands for Low Income Housing
tax credit.
Tax Credit.
Yep.
Section 42 is kind of the mechanism that they use for all of that. If you want to look it up and research it.
So, they generally, strive for, I think it's 30 to 60, of the, area median income, if I remember right.
That's my recollection.
So, yeah. So,
And I want to add, it's not that they strive for, that's what the requirements are when they get the money.
right,
So it's not a suggestion, this is price protected housing.
yes. And so with those projects, those have to be greater than like 20 units. You know, generally they try and do 28, all the way up to, I mean, in our case, up to 60. He's done great, huge projects. He does a lot of them in Hawaii. So, and he can tailor those to fit our community. So, you know, we're just trying to open the conversation, of him working with the city, with you guys, with us. Beartooth is, also working on a project with him, and us as well. So I just think that Tom really needs to share some of his, there he is.
Hi.
Some of his,
Hi.
projects. Thanks, Tom.
Sure, sorry about that. This thing would happen, I got an emergency phone call came and I had to deal with, so I apologize for being late.
No worries. So Angela just kind of gave a little introduction. Do you want to, we have you on the agenda to just talk about a potential future project. So I think we would love to hear a little bit more if you have, if you're able to share with us what you're thinking.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I've lived in Red Lodge, you know, part-time basis going back to 1999. And the business of which we're in is one of developing affordable housing. There may be some handouts you have from Angela, I'm not sure. But we primarily been operating in Hawaii, California. And during that period of time, and particularly the last probably, I don't know, with Mayor Westwood there, we probably started talking about affordable housing in Red Lodge maybe 5 years ago. I think I've given a couple of presentations along the way. And most recently, in the last probably couple of years, I've worked with Angela and we've looked at various areas within Red where we might be able to put some affordable housing. I was particularly interested in hearing about the Brewery Hill work that we just heard. That's a very, I think that's a very needed improvement, which certainly will help the folks living there in Mountain View. I've seen that sort of walkway to nowhere, so to speak. So I think that'll be a very positive thing for the community. We've looked in that urban renewal district, sort of north of town there. The city owns a couple well, I think the city owns a larger parcel there. There's also some ownership by a couple private individuals along 212. We think that would be a good area to look at for affordable housing, maybe some retail on the first floor and perhaps, you know, affordable apartments on the next couple of levels. All of our developments use Section 42 low-income housing tax credits as our equity base. So our residents will earn no more than 60% of the average median income for Carbon County. And we will be working with Montana Housing and perhaps even include some HUD assistance as well, which would take our rents down to 30% level. So between 30 and 60% AMI is the tenants that we look for, which I think hits most of the affordable or the workforce housing needs in Red Lodge. Our typical project is we like to be between 64 and 120 units. That may be a challenge in Red Lodge on different sites we've looked at. There are a couple we're looking at now that would be in the urban renewal district that we would potentially be able to look somewhere between 48 and 64 units. So again, glad to have a chance to at least talk a bit about affordable housing, what we do. Again, I think you've got a kind of a handout, probably have a handout from Angela of one of our projects in, I think that one was on Oahu, if I'm remembering, Angela, is that right? Is that Kailua? Yeah.
Yep.
And that's an example of something we might think about for the urban district coming into Red Lodge, because the first floor, we could put some retail users in there. Then we would have the apartments on probably a 2 stories. It wouldn't, that one's a very, Hawaii is somewhat unique in that they're very dense. For example, that the building you're looking at is similar to a building that we did over on Maui that had 89 units on 2.2 acres. But we went up 4 stories above a parking podium, about 60 feet in height. So we know that that particular area, I think, has a 40 or 45 foot height restriction. So we'd obviously stay within the the restrictions of the parcel, but could at least give you some idea about what we do and how we do it. Our products are, we think, built to last. As an affordable housing developer, we really don't get benefits of a lot of rental increases along the way, unlike a market rate development. So we're pretty limited to the amount of rent we charge going in. We're also very limited on the annual increases we get through HUD. Typically, it's only about 2% a year rent increases. So again, happy to take any questions, but certainly appreciate the time to at least present. And again, sorry for being a bit late.
Thank you, Tom.
Hi,
Mayor,
Dave.
Mayor has a question.
I have a question and a comment. So right now, the area that we are looking at up on top of Brewery Hill
Mhm.
is not within the URD. One of the questions that has come up a couple of times is this group has already modified the URD boundary once. There are some rules around that. It has to be contiguous space that's there, but the positioning of where that is raises the question of, do we want to annex that into the URD? And I would say there are two possible considerations about whether you would want to make that recommendation to council. They would actually have to do it, and I think, Jeremy, it has to be ordinance, right? So it's a double reading to get there. One of them was, do we have the ability, it was mentioned that there's a half-acre parcel in the middle of that land that's privately owned. We are having conversations that have resumed with the property owner about possibly trading that for some city property. Part of that conversation at one point in time is, do we want to acquire that piece of property? Does that make it easier? This particular developer has indicated that's not necessarily a limiting factor, and we can work around that. But it started the conversation of, should this be in the URD in case we need to do some things there. The other benefit of having it be in the URD is if we get some development going dollars on, they specifically stretch the URD that direction so they can have Alpine in there, because that then becomes URD dollars. Of course, and so I don't know what the impacts are of this and if that's something to consider, but it's just something to, I think, for this group to look at and consider if they would want to make the recommendation to City Council to consider making the urban renewal district a little bit larger.
I think we need to know the rules first, and I guess we need to ask the planner about that, to
And, yeah.
research that. If it's possible to change the boundaries a second time.
Oh, and that, yeah, yeah, it is. And part of it is I redo it, and I've talked to them, but I've also talked to Jeremy because this is kind of in his bailiwick, he remembers those things. Like, we all have our things that somebody mentioned it a year ago, but we still remember it. This is in his realm for that, so. And like I said, I don't think it's not a discussion for tonight. I just think it's one of those things to consider. And I don't think, we are working with our planner on that project too, because we're trying to find out what the mechanisms we are to, one of the things that's interesting about Section 42 housing is they get reimbursed, and Tom, don't let me speak out of line, but please correct me if I do. They get reimbursed for the costs of building, but one of the things that is not covered at all is land. And so that's where it's useful to have either cities or private entities, or somebody has to come up with the land that's available. And so we are working with the planner and with the city attorney, and we've actually also reached out to another attorney to find out what the mechanism that's available. You know, basically the city to put some skin in the game so that we can bring this to be.
It sounds like the parcel on the top of the hill is not the only one that's under consideration. You guys have looked at other land in the URD, the northern.
Yes,
part
well,
of
so there's the Brewery Hill, and then there's there's a couple of private entities down at the north end, and then there's a city piece in there
Okay.
as well.
Okay.
So
We're looking at every opportunity you can possibly think of to make work.
So Tom's presentation was mostly focused on 212. Is he also interested in the brewery?
No, his presentation was actually on the top of Brewery Hill. It's not 212.
Yeah.
I heard 212, so I'm
Yeah.
confused.
So there is, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, no, so that's right. And I did say 212, and we've looked at actually two, and Mayor Westwood's correct. We looked at the top of Brewery Hill. There would need to be some subdividing going on up there because our property, we basically have an eightplex, which that one you have is more of a mid-rise type building, which I think would fit better in the 212 area. Again, encouraging some first floor retail as well as workforce housing above it. But on Brewery Hill, we would probably build what we call our eightplex, which basically is 8 units per building. On about a 5-acre parcel, we would end up with roughly 64 units, I think, in that area. Yeah, the half acre and acre piece in the middle, we can, from our perspective, it's doable either way. We can simply, fence around it and have access as through our project to get there. So we're prepared to do it with or without the acre or half acre, whatever that parcel is in the middle. But we do think, and that's why I was commenting earlier, I think that the pathway down the hill makes a world of difference. And we've certainly seen the same thing I've heard, right? People walking and the path is worn out, but sometimes they're in the street and it's just not a very safe condition. So I think the people at Mountain View Estates would also, or Mountain View Apartments, I guess, would also benefit from having that. And I think, again, if that can be done, certainly if it was included in this district, I think that's another plus, right? But we've looked at that site, signed off on that site. That's very, very doable for us as long as it's around a 5-acre buildable piece.
So the biggest challenge we have right now on the top of 78 up there in front of Mountain View is actually just the time. If January were a year away rather than 6 months away, I would be much less concerned. But they have a deadline to put in, I want to say by January, so they like their packet done by December. There's several things we're going to need to do from a city, because right now that land is actually is zoned as part of the airport. So from the planning board perspective, they would need to rezone that, whether that was a P4 or a commercial, which is what that half acre is, interestingly enough, in the middle of that, is a conversation that still needs to go through planning board, and then council needs to approve that. We have talked abstractly with both planning board and council, and both have unilaterally said, yes, we're in favor and we're on board. But there's still a lot of moving pieces we have to move in the next 4 months to make this happen, or at least make it happen for this cycle. And we started it wondering if there was an advantage from the URD. I almost think at this point, the URD benefits more from having it be in. I think that's your consideration as to whether you want to put it in the URD, as opposed to this project, mostly just because everything that's come up, we've figured out ways to get around it without using the URD to do it. So I think it's almost more of a benefit to the URD than it is to the potential project. But it's still something worth considering. It certainly tells the story of what the URD was there to do.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions for Angela or Tom? Yeah. Joanne has a question.
Well, I wanted to ask Jeff for his thoughts as our representative from the planning board.
Well, I think from the planning board perspective, we would like to see kind of what a plan in terms of what that zoning change would look like. I don't, initially I don't see any issues with changing it from public use to community entrance, which that would be. But as with the other zoning change proposal, not having a clear picture of what the ultimate outcome is going to be, and the ultimate plan, I guess it just depends on. I don't foresee any issues at this point, but just kind of talking in abstract. If this happens, that happens, and I'd like to see something a little more concrete. That's my perspective. I'm only one person on the board.
That's good.
So,
especially if you're dealing with city-owned property. And you talked about trades, you know, I guess one of the questions I have is what city property are you looking for trade, and how does that fit into some of the other future uses for city-owned property relative to usage for additional parks and trails?
Yeah, the piece that the owner has expressed some interest in is the little triangle piece just south of that that's currently used for staging. That's a gravel staging spot, and there's some main utilities that go underneath it. So it's about a half an acre for a half an acre. So that the other piece is that it's currently city is bigger, but again, only about a half acre of it is usable because of the utilities that underline onto it. And the intent of that is I believe for still to be open just because of the limitations that are there. So, and that's ultimately something that would need to be approved by council. That's something that the good news is we've gone through that process once because we did a trade that the city came out quite nicely on down by the wildlife sanctuary and picked up a lot more land next to the recycling center. So we've been through the process, and it's basically the same sort of process. It has to have an analysis, and the city has to come out on the better end of it.
So, Jeff, when you were saying a clearer picture of, I'm trying to understand, a clearer picture of Tom's vision of the actual project, or just how it's moving, how it would move forward?
Well, I think, it, you know, from my perspective is what, at least an idea of what the proposed development's gonna be and look like.
Right.
Not necessarily full detailed, blown out
Right.
renderings, but.
And planning board would, when it comes to planning board, I think that would be there. I think you're talking about step 4, and we have 1, 2, and 3 to get through between now and then, but we are putting effort into all of, we're trying to do as many of these things in parallel as we can rather than one at a time.
And one of the main differences between this one and the last one we reviewed is, you know, we've been hesitant to do what they call spot zoning. And that was one of the proposals for the Spires, was gonna be more spot zoning or potentially that. In this case, it's adjacent to, community entrance, so it's basically extending the community entrance zone or bringing this parcel into the community entrance zone and changing it from public. So maybe, you know, from that standpoint, it's potentially less of an issue.
Is there anything, Angela and or Tom, is there anything that you need from us to be able to proceed with your plan?
I don't really think so. I think just open conversations as we try and roll through it, or, you know, I feel like the community and the conversations and the partnership, I think we all feel the same way about affordable housing in our community. And Tom, do you have anything really to add?
No, I think it was really just, as Angela said, just to communicate with your commission to let you know what we're thinking about. And we are, I'm very committed personally to try to find a way to find workforce housing be developed there in Red Lodge and Carbon County. So we appreciate your interest and being able to share our thoughts so far. And obviously it's premature to ask for any direction or, you know, from the board, but I just want you all to know that we're definitely looking at it, working with mayor's office, planning. Brian Hanna's been very helpful as well from the city so far. So, and Angela's done a great job working with us. So again, just thanks for the time tonight, and I appreciate it.
I had one more question. I guess you had mentioned a little bit earlier that whether that 5 acres or that parcel, city-owned parcel, is part of the development or not. Can you explain how that, whether that would be, if that's part of it, how that would affect it versus
So let me
not?
invert your picture a little bit, and I can pull it up a little bit later, but basically, the city owns everything at the top except a 1/2 acre parcel in the middle.
Okay.
And that 1/2 acre parcel is adjacent to where the old road was prior to where the new road moved. The city already owns everything else.
So the city owns kind of the outer, and so it's the hole in the donut.
There's a hole in the donut that is owned by somebody else, and
Okay,
the conversations at this point have basically said, we can do a big U that you pull into this complex one way and go out the other side, and he can have a driveway that accesses his property, so we don't have, so, and then I picture up, so does that help, Jeff? I think you have that disinverted, so.
okay. So the proposed development would occur on the city-owned land?
That is correct.
And if you acquired that,
Then the
Parcel.
city-owned land wouldn't have a hole in the donut.
okay, and that would create more opportunities for more flexibility in how that whole parcel would be developed, or
Yeah,
the number
Yeah.
of units?
maybe stick another unit in there.
Okay, that helps.
And Tom mentioned, but he's also, I mentioned that we're hitting multiple prongs at once. He's also reached out and had a couple of different conversations with Brian Hanna, who has, of course, worked with planning board as well, but as far as just kind of that residential feel and the look and what matches with Red Lodge, so those have been several of the conversations, and ultimately, a lot of that will go to planning board, but some guidance of here's what's worked and here's what hasn't worked, and
Great, well, I'm sure you guys have seen our application, it's online, and, there is a flow there, but you can also, you would be number 3, so, it's a process of discussion, which you guys are all very well connected, so we are, thank you.
Thanks for taking the time for it.
Yeah, well, thanks for making all this, a lot to get all this together, so thank you. Okay.
This is kind of, because you mentioned it, like I said, these are all conversations that started in January or February, and it's kind of just taken till now to get them
Takes time.
ready for public.
Yeah,
West out.
great. Okay.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Everybody, okay? Well,
Thank you, Tom.
yeah, thank you so much, appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thanks.
So let's move on to, item number C under new business, Beartooth RC&D and how they can help assist the city and our urban renewal agency with economic and community development.
Well, I'm Myrna Lastowski, if you don't already know me, with Fairtooth RC&D, and this is Nan Knight. And we gave you a handout that will explain a little bit about brownfields, which is one of many different ways that Beartooth can help. And we just wanted to take a few minutes to introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit about Beartooth, because I feel like it's a kind of a secret thing. Like, so many people are like, Beartooth RC&D, but what does that even mean? And what do you do? And where are you? And so we're located in Joliet, and it's Beartooth Resource Conservation and Development. So we primarily do economic and community development. And for example, one of our projects is we wrote a grant through USDA that is providing for Angela's position. So we have been, kind of on the sidelines with some of the stuff, and it's been great to see all the great things that Angela and Brad are doing with workforce housing. And we're doing a community, kind of it's called Recharge Our Community's Economy, and that's another grant that we're doing over in the city of Columbus. And we are doing a series of workshops where we're pulling together residents from Columbus and saying, Columbus is great, how can it be even better? And taking ideas, and in the end, come up with 1, 2, maybe 3 projects that we're going to work on in the next couple of years with the residents. This is the same program that was done in Lewistown, I think about 5 years ago. And, some great things have been happening there. So we do a lot of those sorts of things. We work individually with people, businesses, Lately, we've been helping a lot of businesses with REAP applications, which is the Rural Energy for America program. And that can be any kind of energy efficiency upgrades. Nan is working on one with Jarrett Miller with the Top of the World on a wind turbine. We do solar, so there's a lot of different things going on. And then I wanted to let Nan tell you a little more about the Brownfield program that we've been involved with Tom and Angela and Brad, and some possibilities with that.
Yeah, so just a little bit, again, I'm Nan Knight. I'm the finance director for Beartooth RC&D, and then I recently took over our Brownfields program. We were recently awarded a assessment grant to be able to pass on for phase 1, phase 2. Phase 1 will just go in and allow you to do the historic of a property to know what was past done on a property. And then phase 2 has 2 different components that can go into a building or a property and tell you, like, with the building materials, if there's asbestos, lead, what kind of contamination, and or if it's a petroleum site. A lot of, bladed properties, that are on old railway or mining or that kind of stuff, we can come in and help do those reports to make it, see what the contamination is, and do an ABCA, a cleanup plan to see what the cost would be to remediate the site. And then there are different options for the cleanup of that. So the program is free of charge, if approved, free of charge to anybody who owns the property. A good example of one that we did is the pea cannery. We did the pea cannery, and then we turned around and leveraged that funding to be able to do the feasibility study through Big Sky. So we did that. One thing that we can do is if there is any properties that are vacant in your district, we can also do feasibility studies to see what the use for that could be, potentially be. We also, if the city owns property, we can turn around and do community planning on any of our properties to see what the community's best needs are, or wants are for a property. So there's a lot of different ways that this brownfield funding can be used, not just, let's go in and see what's wrong with it. A lot of redevelopment plans can also be utilized, which is pretty cool. So we just thought that if your owners talk to you guys, or just if anybody in the community, just know that there are these resources available. And there's a little bit of information about it.
And just a couple other things I thought of, too, that I forgot to mention. Nan is the finance director. We have a revolving loan fund, too. So if you have businesses in the city who are wanting to expand, or they need to get some equipment or working capital or whatever, and they are having trouble getting financed through a bank, that's where Beartooth can definitely help. And Nan has done a lot with that program in the last couple of years, so it's really thriving. Letters of support, please reach out to us on any sort of thing, for your application and so on. We're always happy to lend our support to those projects. And then, is that what you were talking about with the community market study?
Oh, the KSU tab, since we're a grantee of an assessment grant, we have also resources that we're able to tap into. And they can come in and they will come in and do that community wide planning. So that way, it's just a third party instead of the mayor, whoever's sitting there and, getting, or they will also come in and do housing market studies.
And all of this, again, we write a little application narrative. It takes about 3 months in advance to get them to come here, but then we get a full report back on anything that we get, back on our community. So those are just a couple of different things.
I'm kind of shocked that they didn't mention, they've been involved, on the periphery on this Bastion Rocky Fork Inn acquisition.
Well, it
just
wasn't in
closed
the
on.
urban renewal district, so I was trying to keep it focused on the urban
But as
renewal
far as,
district.
okay, so,
I
yeah,
was trying.
so, okay. Yeah, so they've been, kind of part of the process of mass moving this thing forward. And, so stage 1 was acquisition, which happened Thursday. Stage 2 is demolition, remediation, and bank stabilization. The goal is to have that done, at least the remediation and the demolition this year. And then they are going to be very much a part of stage 3, which is what does it look like next? And of course, there's a lot of rules around that we have to adhere to as far as stipulations for the funding that we got from FEMA to acquire that land. But they've been a vital and important part of that. I'm going, why are they not talking now? It's because she was keeping it to URD for you guys, but
Yeah, on the Rocky Fork, it was FEMA, Montana DEQ, and then us. That was it. So there was a lot of moving parts. There,
I said a lot of mass moving that
yes,
forward.
there was.
And I'll just add that they've been great helping us on that foundation. Verna talked about, our CDI grant, and that's a 2-year grant, 3-year grant. And I think we're coming towards the end of that, but, 1 more year? Okay. But, so doing, like she said, educational, workshops, and we try and do them in different parts of the county, and we're really trying to bring in all of Carbon County, and not just really focus on Red Lodge, do some outreach. We did a housing study over in Bridger. We did 3 community meetings, and they were very much involved in that as well. So they're a huge part of our efforts too. So
We do have a brownfield, project going on in Red Lodge, but you guys will hear about it here sooner than later. I'll just leave it at that.
And you will be happy.
Oh, good.
So one of the things that you mentioned, you do, kind of, basically planning studies or, to define what the community wants, or kind of a vision or goals. And one of the things Joanne has talked about for the urban renewal district is the need to go through a visioning exercise to kind of establish what the goal, what do we want the urban renewal district to look like in the future, and how to get there? Is that kind of what,
Absolutely, because, and especially like for the urban renewal district, there is blighted properties within it, right? And so like, it would be great to get the community together and then as for you guys aren't taking all the brunt of the questions, right? So you're also sitting back and able to absorb the information that is being, and then KSU is the one that is hosting the talk, so they know how to just keep the conversation going, and then at the end of it, they will give you a study back of what they got out of the community.
so what's the process of getting into
That would be for us to have an additional conversation, and then we, would just get a hold of our contact people, and then it's just kind of like a little application that we fill out, and then get on their list of when they can make it into our community to have that.
Okay. So it kind of sounds like maybe meeting with us again at some point in the future and
Yep.
kind of talking about it.
Absolutely.
What's the next step to make that be a past tense and a done thing rather than just something we're talking about? What do we need to do next? Do I need to reach out, make a request? Does council need to do something? Does this board just say, yes, please?
Yeah.
Do we just put
If
you on
we
the
have,
agenda?
we could just communicate with
Mhm.
Tara and just try to, if that's something that they want, you know, then it's just kind of setting up and making sure that that is, you know, a go.
When you
And
say they,
making-
is this they?
Yeah.
KSU, I'm not familiar with that one.
Kansas State University.
Oh, Kansas State.
So our grant is through EPA. So EPA is who awarded us our grant. And so EPA also awards Kansas State University. So there's 3 universities that are broke up into regions. KSU is who has, our region is in it. And so they are our technical assistance arm. So they help us with a lot of just planning, a lot of things that we need, they are. So since there's a group of like 12 of them, that's still a lot. They cover like 6 regions, so they're the biggest out of the whole nation. So they have a lot of ground to cover, so that's why it just takes a little bit longer to get done.
But is it just this board saying yes, please?
Yes, and just reaching out and making sure, like, okay, this is exactly what I'm proposing to Kansas State, right? So a couple follow-up emails and that's it.
Yeah, so I think if you amongst yourselves said, hey, let's narrow down this visioning exercise that we'd like to have done, and then this is what we'd like. And then send that to us, and we can, you know, do the application with KSU, and hopefully if everything works out, then, you know, a few months down the road, they can come and do it.
Is it the property, is it your money, is it like, what is
Yeah.
exactly you want the community planning to be about?
Do you have some examples you could share with?
We can get
us?
some. Yeah,
Absolutely.
we'll get some, and I can send those on to Sarah.
We can maybe put that on the agenda for our next meeting. Is that satisfactory to the group? Because I don't think we're supposed to make a decision unless it's on the agenda, so
Yeah.
even if it is no cost to us.
Put it on.
No, I definitely
Okay.
like to continue the conversation and look at
Absolutely.
some examples and then invite them back to actually talk about the process in a little bit more detail,
Okay,
and then make the decision after
Okay.
that, so.
sounds good.
And just one comment is that you've already invested in this with the pea cannery, so that it's kind of an extension of what you've already been doing, so.
You ain't seen nothing yet, baby.
Yeah. Yep.
Any other comments or questions for Beartooth?
Thank you.
Just one more, I guess.
Yes.
This is part of the URD, but have you looked at the old hospital?
Surprise, surprise, actually, it is open, it is, that is the project that we're just getting ready to start.
Good question.
You
Ask
ain't
and you
seen
shall
nothing
receive.
yet.
That's awesome.
And we are working with Angela and Tom.
There will be community outreach, just so the community is aware of what we will be doing. So that is, but this is, we just secured, our QEP, to do the studies. So it's very, very fresh. So, but we figured we would at least go to the immediate homeowners and let them know what is gonna be done in the area, and personally ask them if they have any questions.
And Tom is, really wants to be a part of that, so.
Absolutely,
He-
and
Yeah.
he, amazing
respect that.
developer,
Yeah.
and his vision is awesome, so.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he
that's-
has a great heart for lunch. Yeah.
Great. Okay, any more questions? Any-
So darn it, guys, I tried to keep it to the
Yeah.
URD, but.
Well, we obviously care about the whole town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just all really bad liars, so if you ask us questions point blank, well, but there's a lot of that stuff that's still in development stuff, and so, I mean, this is a public meeting and it's out there, but it's also, let's not derail stuff before it gets to total window.
Right. Okay, Wonderful, well, thank you so much for coming, appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and I'll be in touch, for, yeah, our civil meeting. Okay, well, let's move on with our agenda. We're at the old business. So discuss vacant positions on our board. Thought I would put it under old business since it's not new anymore. So we have, I think we have spots for 7 total, and we have only 5. So if anybody has any friends or neighbors or people they could pay off to have on our board, I don't know, it'd just be nice to.
And both need to be city residents, right?
Yes, they do, because we have, spots for 2 people that are not city residents, and Marcy and I have those spots.
So I've been twisting some arms. So
You have been twisting some arms.
Yeah, I
Okay.
wish I had invited her to come tonight, 'cause shows how
Yeah.
vital we are.
Yeah, yeah, we got stuff going on.
Stuff going on, it's great.
Right, right.
Yeah, so this, I'm sure, is just the first of many cool things to happen. So,
So it would be good if I could share, the minutes. Is
okay.
that, it's open, right? It's open
Oh,
knowledge.
absolutely. Yeah.
Share the minutes?
Yep. And so the minutes and our agendas, and there's, Mayor, there's probably an application to apply, or how does one apply to be on? Do you just send an email of inquiry, or like, what's the process?
Well, what we
I
would
should know this.
No, and I apologize, because I've had another similar conversation on another board where I think the decision was that we were not going to expand that board, so I'm trying to, wait, that
Well,
was that one.
we're not
this one.
expanding, we're just getting to our full.
Well, but I think it says
Ideally.
5 to 7 members, so technically you're full, but we have the option of adding 2.
Yeah.
I think, and so I was trying to remember which conversation, but ultimately, if we want to do that, what we would do is we would post 2 additional positions online. And I think, was this one of them that we had
We
posted? There
did
was a
that.
couple of them that we posted them and didn't get a response. And I think
Yes, did that.
I think where we left this one, my brain is catching up, where we left this one was, if you guys find people that are interested, we will repost it again. But so far, what we've just been doing is supporting our local newspaper. And we'd like those results to be useful. So I think that's right. So it was, yeah, if you guys come up with some names, we will repost it. But to repost it every week with no results is not a good fiduciary use of city money.
So it seems though like you don't post all the minutes and agendas for everything, so can't you just have it always online, like open positions online on your website or something? Or?
We always, as a matter of practice, always post openings for all the boards in the paper as well.
Okay, so you do just the paper, you can't just
No,
do
we
the website?
do it on, we would still need to do it on, I think, I can check with legal and confirm,
I mean,
but
I
I
just
think
think
we
that
have
it
to.
doesn't follow logically that you can, it's okay to post just online for some things but not others.
Oh, no, there's nothing that we post just online for. Minutes is not the same as we have an opening. So is that what I'm tracking? So minutes are online, we
Agendas,
don't put
you
it in
don't
the.
put agendas.
Yeah, no, and agendas
Yeah.
don't, but a position opening is different.
All right, so then in the end, we want our full positions, and we always have,
Okay?
so what do we need to do?
Come up with people who would say, yes, if I saw that in the paper, I would submit my name.
That's really complicated.
I don't.
No, that's kind of right where you started this, right? I just had to
I
catch
work
up.
from
But
home.
when I applied, Courtney just gave me an application and I filled it out.
And ran an ad in the paper.
I didn't read an ad in the paper.
There was an ad in the paper, though.
Oh, okay.
And like I said, we did this and then extended it and ran it again. And then, I think it was this one, and there wasn't
Right.
any interested parties. And so we
That's
left it
true.
at, when you guys come up with some interested parties, we'll
Can we
repost
put
it.
it on like Red Lodge Buzz, is that legal?
No, yeah, so there's no problem with doing that. Hey, there's going to be some positions that are posted. If you're interested, and then you say, Dave, now.
Complicated.
It's like advertise when you know it's gonna work.
Well, put a urban renewal district together when you know there's gonna be increments.
Because we did have, when we posted, it's not just paper, it's also online, it's also in
Okay,
the city stuff that's out there.
okay.
So I think your original request was spot on. You guys go out and beg, recruit, do whatever.
Car wash.
Yeah, okay. All right, anything else on that? Okay, treasurer's report, do you have something for us?
So if we have 119,000 for tax year 2023, that tracks with what we were anticipating, which is great. We did get the certified values for 2024 in, since our last meeting. And so 2023's increment, which was our first value, was 233,000 worth of taxable value that then gets distributed through the mills, and that's where that 119 came from. For 2024, that value is up to 332,000, so it's about a 50% increase. So we can estimate for 2024, roughly 178-ish thousand for tax year 2024. That combined with the 119, by the end of 2024, we're looking at about 297,500.
That's 12,000.
Potentially, yeah. And so that's kind of where we're at, assuming there's a lot of asterisks about the legislative session might impact artistic increment, believe it or not, particularly if they do a homestead exemption, which will basically allow, there's a bunch of things going through the legislature that will give a tax break to, your primary home, possibly long-term renting versus second home, kind of that stuff. That will increase, that will impact our revenue. So that's just something to keep an eye on. And then I just wanted to throw it out there for if we're discussing the boundary change, and just the kind of development that goes into the district in general. If it's, for instance, Section 42 or HUD, they're likely going to be tax exempt, so we're not going to really see a lot of revenue increase from that. It's not going to increase our TIF increment. It will meet our mission, though, so that's just something I wanted to throw out there if we discuss the boundary in the future. Let's end the report.
Okay, any questions for the treasurer? Okay. Written correspondence, any petitions or communication from the audience? Steph, do you want to talk about the thing that you were mentioning?
I just
here?
wanted to quickly mention, and just make people aware that, if you aren't aware, that planning board is reviewing the growth policy for the city of Red Lodge right now, and we've gone through the reviewing goals, objectives, and some action items, and they're continuing to review that document. And I think there's a draft available online to look at, but that's just a working draft. It's not far from complete yet. And then concurrently with that, also working on the downtown master plan update to the 1986 and I think 2000 some plans that were developed for the downtown business district. And there's going to be a public meeting, scoping meeting, September 19th. Focus groups and kind of focused on the sections carved out for the business community, and then one for the tourism and outdoor recreation community, and then community-wide. And public's invited to attend or participate in all three, but they're scattered through the day, so it kind of accommodates people's schedule. That's really all I wanted to make sure. And growth policy gets to some of the visioning aspects in terms of identifying goals and objectives, And one of the new things is to incorporate the URD into that growth
Great.
policy somehow. So we haven't discussed that in detail yet, so that's something to maybe keep in mind.
Okay,
Should we attend a meeting if you're gonna discuss it, or?
If we're gonna discuss it, yeah, probably, but I don't know when that will be.
could you let us know?
No?
If I know.
Okay,
Oh,
sounds
I
good.
know.
That's fair. Okay, great. Any other business? Okay, I guess we will adjourn the meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for October 14th at 5:30. And appreciate all your time. It's exciting to have some meaty stuff to talk about.
It rains, of course.
Yeah, when it rains, it pours. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
You said October what?
October 14th.